In 1978, your grandmother probably drove a car she never truly chose. Not because she didn't care about cars, but because admitting what she wanted would have raised eyebrows, started arguments, and maybe even questioned her role in the family. And the truth is, some of the cars she secretly dreamed about were far more interesting than anything parked in the driveway. You have to understand what 1978 actually felt like. This was post-oil crisis, Britain and Europe. Inflation was biting. Fuel prices still mattered. Households were cautious, practical, and quietly anxious about money. Cars were no longer just about transport. They were statements of responsibility. Families wanted something sensible, reliable, and respectable. And for women of your grandmother's generation, the expectation was clear. You didn't buy excitement. You bought approval. But beneath that surface, something else was happening. If your grandmother wanted a car that made her feel quietly superior, the Saab 99 would have been right at the top of the list. In 1978, this wasn't flashy. It didn't shout, but it felt engineered, not styled. Front-wheel drive, solid crash protection, a cabin that felt designed for real thinking adults rather than showroom posing. Saab marketed safety before it was fashionable, and women noticed that long before men did. The problem was perception. To many families, it felt foreign, too odd, too expensive for something that didn't look expensive. So the Saab often stayed in the brochure, admired, never defended. But if safety and intelligence felt too unconventional, there was another dream entirely, one rooted in freedom. The Volkswagen Scirocco in 1978 was quietly radical. It wasn't loud like a muscle car. It wasn't fragile like an Italian coupe. It was compact, practical, and still felt youthful. Low roofline, sharp styling, proper handling. It made everyday driving feel intentional rather than routine. For many women, this car represented independence. Something you chose for yourself, not for passengers or approval. But that was the problem. Sporty cars raised questions. Who was it for? Why did she need it? What was she trying to prove? So instead of a Scirocco, many ended up with something taller, slower, and socially safer. And then there were the women who wanted comfort. Not excitement, but comfort on their terms. The Citroën GS was one of the most misunderstood cars of the late 1970s. Hydropneumatic suspension, aerodynamic shape, an interior that felt years ahead of its time. On rough British roads, it floated when others bounced. Women noticed that, especially those who did most of the driving. But the GS scared people. Too French, too complicated, too unfamiliar for local mechanics. It wasn't unreliable in the way people feared. It was just different. And different felt risky when money was tight. So again, admiration quietly turned into compromise. But perhaps the most controversial dream wasn't about engineering at all. It was about image. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Plenty of grandmothers in 1978 liked the Ford Capri. Long bonnet, rear-wheel drive, stylish, affordable performance. It felt aspirational without being unreachable. But it was labeled a man's car, a bachelor's car. A car that suggested confidence rather than caretaking. So liking it was one thing, admitting it was another. Many women never even voiced it. They simply watched them drive past and moved on. And finally, there was the most dangerous dream of all, the one that promised glamour. The Alfa Suit offered something rare in 1978. It felt emotional. Sharp steering, lightweight, a driving experience that made even mundane journeys memorable. For women who enjoyed driving, not just arriving, this mattered. But rust, reputation, and fear killed the dream. Families heard stories. Mechanics warned them off. Friends shook their heads. And so the Alfa Suit became another what if? Looking back, the cars your grandmother wanted in 1978 tell us something important. They weren't reckless choices. They weren't impractical fantasies. They were thoughtful, modern, confident decisions filtered through a world that didn't always allow women to make them openly. Instead, many ended up with cars chosen by consensus. Safe, sensible, forgettable. But those quiet preferences mattered. They influenced what came next. Hatchbacks, safety-first design. Comfortable daily drivers that didn't feel apologetic. So the next time you think your grandmother didn't care about cars, remember this. She did. She just lived in a time when wanting the right thing mattered more than wanting the true thing. And if this story sounds familiar, chances are it didn't end in 1978.